uh, for those that had been previously in the other webinars, this webinar tonight is actually built up from the previous ones. That doesn't mean that by not knowing what happened in the previous ones, you will not get the information for today's symposium. Truly, those are independent and still interrelated. So the goal is to build up skills and practice them as we continue in our programs. So today we are going to be talking about open-ended and closed-ended questions. And you probably have heard about those before. And in a very simplistic way, the closed-ended appears to be those questions that are just simply answered by a yes or no, or a very specific information. And of course, we probably know from our courses that open-ended are those that will allow the other individual to share everything they want to share. Tonight, we are going to begin seeing the open and closed-ended questions in a very different way. Because when we are in a dynamic with another human being, those questions become relevant as we understand them. So the goal is to explore, or my goal tonight is to present to you different ways of seeing those questions and the meaning that they may carry when we post them to the individual in front of us, even when we are just simply want to ask questions. So to start with, let me share my screen. That was kind of a quick intro. Share first, okay. Share. Screen two, there you go. Let me open everything. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yeah, I can see it.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I'm glad. So as we move on into the presentation, you will probably be looking me looking down. I'm trying to post the link for the symposium for those that cannot access it through the flyer so that everyone can attend. So I'm here paying attention to everyone, okay? So like I said, today we are going to explore the power of asking questions, whether these questions are a simple yes, no questions, or whether the question actually triggers or invites the individual in front of us to give us more information in a very fluid manner. Meaning, you probably have experienced this type of approaches when you go to job interviews and they just tell me about yourself. And that's the opportunity actually for you to share everything you want about you to the other person. In this symposium, we are going to be gearing towards what the counseling process is and why we use those questions in 3 different ways of looking at those questions, okay? In that way, the open and closed-ended questions are not just simply a yes or no or a restricted response, but more than that for everyone, okay? So welcome everyone, and let's start, if it allows me. So today we are going to explore those questions, the etymology of those questions, the functions of each question, and the humanistic view of those questions in the process of supporting others. So in that way, we are going to embrace those questions in a more deep and meaningful way, more than just a page or 2 pages from the textbook, which I think at times is very important for us to continue developing. This is linked, as I mentioned, to your previous skills that we have explored in other webinars, such as paying attention, tracking the behavior of the individual. I forgot what we saw last time, but around those topics. So the entire goal of understanding those questions and exploring them is as a tool to connect to the other individual. So, and if you are confused right now, I'm glad you are, because at the end you will understand what this is about. Okay, So welcome everyone. So when we talk about open-ended questions and closed-ended questions, we talk about information that relates actually to the other human being in the context of counseling. So when you are actually asking someone for their information, you are more than just asking, you are actually allowing the other individual to reflect about him, herself, or themselves. So when we think about ourselves, me as a client, for example, when you ask me a question that is an open-ended question, what you are actually inviting me to do is to reflect about my own experience and put all that information together so I can return back to you what you are asking me. When this is happening, you as a clinician or as a future clinician or even as a case manager now for those that are in an intern or those that are in an internship or those that are already working, this is actually engaging to the process of communicating with other human beings. I'm sending you a question, an input, an output, and you are actually receiving that information in an input to your brain. You are triggered to actually begin formulating and exploring yourself with one purpose: to understand and know and get to know the other person. The entire goal is to comprehend the individual in front of me. How? By truly asking questions that will invite the other to feel comfortable and to share with us. So the otherness, as I love this term because truly what it does, it allows to begin positioning ourselves as another entity in front of the other. And when that happens, it allows me as a clinician and the client to bring our otherness together to understand each other. So asking questions, whether they are open or not, is indeed a dynamic in which both individuals share information. Whether this information is not verbal, whether this information is actually detailed, or whether this information is restricted with a yes or no question. The purpose, the intentionality, is to get to know the other individual. So very quickly, kind of a general conceptualization, which actually touches in what you have already read in some of your courses, or even just by, simply searching on Google. Open-ended questions actually stem from those esteeming words that will invite the other individual to tell you more. Process questions comes from there, such as, how does it feel for you? Tell me more. What's the purpose? Those open-ended questions, examples, and a stem sentence actually allows the other to process the information. The ended closed questions, truly what it does is just getting a specific information that you need, but not just because randomly you want to ask the persons, what's your name, so that you can write it down in the paper, because there is an intentionality behind that. And this is the part that I absolutely fall in love with, because even when I ask my clients, what's your name, and I hear actually a Polish last name being given to me, what do you think is happening in my brain? I started formulating ideas already. And why is this important? Because oftentimes the ideas that we formulate truly, at times, not always, but those may be actually biased, right? Very important that we begin understanding that every question I send has an intentionality. You as the clinician must be aware of what's that intentionality. What is it doing to you when the client or whoever you are servicing tells you, my name is Maria, or my name is Jaime, or my name is Anne? What is that actually producing in you? Is that generating a specific view of the individual? And yet alone, you were the one asking the name. But this is what why this type of presentations excites me, because it's much more than just asking one question. It's inviting you to reflect, what does it mean to ask the individual their name?
I think one thing is counselors, the process asks us to do is to remain as open as possible. And as you mentioned, being aware of our own biases, so we don't close this individual into a box or a smaller box that they're already in. And through the process of counseling, it invites them to explore themselves in a way they haven't been able to, because the world at large looks at them in a certain way, thinks about them in a certain way based on how they look, how they present themselves, what their name is, as you mentioned, what their gender is, or perceived gender, and all these things that that take away the freedom for us to truly express ourselves and then answer those deeper questions within the context of the therapeutic relationship.
That's right, Oscar. Thank you for complimenting the presentation. I absolutely believe that. So the entire goal of taking this simple topic in our field of counseling or human services is very important. What you think it's already given, an open-ended question, this is what it does, this is what it means, truly carries on more. So of course, the function for the open-ended question, you probably know, is to elicit a longer response. And then a closed-ended question actually has a dichotomist. Some of the questions are dichotomist. So such as, are you angry? They can give you the yes or no. That's just a type of closed-ended questions. So it's really the short answer given to you. Now, what I would like to bring to you, which is exciting and new, is begin introducing the concept of the Bloom's taxonomy as it applies to the open-ended and closed-ended questions. I'm not so sure if you're familiar with the Bloom's taxonomy in the process of learning, but according to Bloom's, there are different applicability of the information that individuals must demonstrate in order to locate them into their own processing of the information. Very quickly, we will see this in a minute. Very quickly, you can actually ask someone to remember their name, and according to Bloom's, that will be just information that they have recollected, but just there. For him, asking someone to recall something is just what he calls a lower level order thinking, meaning just recall, nothing else is happening. For him, when you ask an individual, how does it feel to you? He thinks about those type of questions, which is actually to elicit a longer response, a high order thinking questions. Why? Because you are inviting the individual to utilize all their system, including experiences, knowledge, ways of being, meta programs, cognitive deficits, cognitive abilities, long-term memory abilities, long-term memory abilities. When you pose this type of questions, you are actually inviting the individual to utilize a lot of energy. So of course, when you support someone and you're working in the human services field, when you ask open-ended questions, you are not just eliciting a longer response. You are moving the entire human being in front of you. So we will actually explore the etymological background of the questions, which, grammatically speaking, the what, the why, the how, the when are nothing but interrogative pronouns that allow us to obtain information. But I want to touch a little bit of that so that we begin formulating a clear concept of what's the true meaning of those questions. And at the end, I want to present to you a humanistic way of looking at those questions, okay? So to begin with, we are going to explore Bloom's taxonomy in asking questions. So according to Bloom's taxonomy, their levels of understanding and learning takes place in different phases. So the very lower level is just simply remembering the information. I read a passage and I remember what the passage is about. The next level is actually truly understanding what the message is in that passage, right? So as the human being continues evolving in their learning process, the next step becomes an application of what you learn. This is probably very common when you have questions asked on your quizzes or in your test. What we are asking you to do is to apply the information. As you continue to move forward in the next level, what you do in your learning process is actually analyze. Yeah, Dr. Wentz actually asked us these questions about substance abuse population in Croatia, for example. But then after looking into their information from their country, from sources from the country, whatever is reported in the United States is contradictory. You are analyzing information. And I believe that reporting that information can cause problems in our society. Then you are evaluating the information. Thus, I suggest that we create a new method of obtaining information that clearly matches the way we gather data for that specific population. That means that you have created a way of solving the challenge. So you produce an original way of doing it. So you go from this simplistic thinking of, I'm just remembering what's happening, to this creative way of thinking about the question you gave me. So what does the Bloom's taxonomy has to do with their open and ended closed questions? Here it is what I has to do. When you ask questions, when you pose a question to another human being in front of you, what you are actually doing is evoking, moving, shaking the other human being to give you the information. When you ask them to remember, very effortlessly, they just send you the information. When you actually ask questions that require analysis, actually required to apply and analyze, to evaluate, and even create, what you do, you evoke a high order level thinking, which is exhausting, very exhausting. And yet alone, simply by using the simple open-ended question and the closed-ended question. A lot is there to think about, because what we want to do, and I believe we all want to do, we want to access the experience of the other human being. And if you ask me a closed-ended question, will that access that information? Perhaps not. But not because you are not accessing that information, it means that the closed-ended question is less important, which here is me moving into the creative level in the counseling field. I was always told that if you ask closed-ended questions in a session, that they will not do anything to you, but it will be a filler because you are not able to actually carry on with the session. Contrary to what I learned, I'm here sharing with you, those questions are very important, because those questions will provide you with, at least will evoke an answer from those individuals that may be fully silenced in session. So they are both important. Don't let yourself lead by the idea of lower level thinking is less than a higher level thinking. Both are important. Is this lower and high only indicates the level in which the individuals are, from remembering to understanding to apply to analyze to evaluate, and the higher is to create. And we will see a couple examples so that you can begin to imagine how this beautifully works in a session, or even when you are just servicing individuals in a case management setting or the human services per se.
One thing that kind of evokes some thoughts about and why it's so important to understand Bloom's taxonomy in a counseling session is sometimes if you're asking open-ended questions or higher ordered questions and you're getting the response, I don't know, you might need to adjust which order of function you're trying to access, because in some cases, especially with children or adolescents, they might not have all of the developed faculties that we might consider in most functioning adults. So if you're getting a lot of I don't knows, you want to think about meeting the client where they're at. Said, maybe I'm asking a question that they aren't quite capable of answering, or emotionally, because when we get really emotional, sometimes that can inhibit our creative thinking. And so I need to tone the question down so I don't overwhelm them with like a mental, physiological, emotional response that shuts the session down and closes them off, which probably happens in their interpersonal life. So one of the reasons they might be in counseling. And it's just, I thought of as Dr. Wentz was going over this schedule here.
Thank you, Mr. Sida. I do believe that, but then this brings up a very important topic. When your client is a child that cannot be fully expressive, who does this taxonomy apply to? The child or to you, the clinician? This is why open-ended questions and closed-ended questions, as it relates to the Bloom's taxonomy, has this double function. It's not only for whoever is in front of you, it is for you as well. You got to be creative, higher level, in order to actually evoke and shake the individual in front of you. Have you ever heard ask the right questions? That is what it is. It's not that you need to ask the right question. You need to ask the questions that actually levels up to the individuals in a way that evokes the response so that they can reflect, they can think about, and they can engage. For little kids, you probably don't want to ask high critical thinking questions when you can actually just play in the sand with them. And they will tell you the story. They are very creative by nature, and creativity, for all they may not know, is already a high level thinking, which we as adults may have lost through the process of adopting, thinking, and knowing from other structures. So this bidirectional effect in the Bloom's taxonomy is applicable for our counseling field. So thank you, Oscar, for that beautiful example. Appreciate that. So very quickly, closed-ended questions, they are dichotomous in nature at times, and other times are just direct questions, right? How are you today? Fine. They are quantifiable. This is my favorite one. When we are in session, we ask the client, hey, from 1 to 10, being 1, I feel horrible, and 10, I feel amazing. How are you feeling today? 9. Jennifer, I love the question. Do you think most children lie? I believe children have a beautiful creative mind. That's my belief. So I'm not so sure if in my belief, it's equal to lying. With people that have learning disabilities, do you change the way you approach your questions? Absolutely. No questions about it. And maybe not only the questions, but you may probably need to modify your approach.
Yeah, and that also is true for people who are on what we call the spectrum, autism spectrum disorder, because there are many people who fall outside of a diagnosable disorder, but they have a lot of autistic tendencies. So they have trouble with metaphorical thinking, creative process, social prompting. And if you're just kind of paying attention, you'll start to get that, and you'll start to allow yourself kind of the freedom to say, okay, I need to adapt my style of counseling, my way of questioning, my way of being. And sometimes, just like you might talk to somebody who needs a little bit more attention, like an elderly person or a child, or and just adapt it so that your session and your interaction is more sensitive to their experiences and also more productive. Because if you just keep going at your own speed, I don't know if you guys ever seen this, like maybe somebody speaks a foreign language and the person doesn't understand them and they just keep asking the question louder and louder, like as if they scream at them, they'll somehow understand it. I've seen that many times, and I'm like, that's not helping. There's a language barrier here. It has nothing to do with volume. But sometimes, you might talk to your grandma and she doesn't hear you talk louder, and maybe that same function is at play without even realizing it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There are a few questions here that, thank you, Oscar, for that I would like to actually comment on very quickly so I can continue with the presentation. But Savannah, in the moment that you post the idea of do children's lie, my tendency as a wonderful clinician is to ask you, what is that belief coming from? Because when you tell me that the kids tell you a beautiful story, to me, what appears to be a lie to you may be a creative way of sharing the information. You may find out that that information may not be manifested truly as it is in reality, but that's not lying. That's the kid's capacity to express who they are. Do they adapt according to the context? Of course, we all do. If the kid is in risk, the kid is going to continue creating fantastic stories in order to save themselves. This is the blueprint inside of us that protects us. All of us do that, including kids. Even when you say, well, they don't have the cognitive complexity to do that. They may not have your cognitive complexity as an adult, but they have the creativity that you have lost through time. So yeah, I will say, to me, they may enact particular narratives in order to support whatever is happening around them, whether it's to protect themselves or not. They will evoke those narratives. Trauma. Yes, indeed, you may want to, if it is working with children, I will not ask questions related to trauma. I will play with them in the sand and then let them tell you what's happening so that that's expressed. Could you speak more on the difference in treating people on the spectrum and what's typical of them? Gabby, it's I would love to, but let's go through this presentation because it's a very extensive topic in talking to helping kids on the spectrum. However, I have to share with you that as a former school counselor, I love my students who suffer of autism. Why? Because they are the most genuine, honest, and present individual. What you consider to be excessively sensitive, to me, it's a beautiful presence. They feel, they hear, they get annoyed by the noise because they are actually present. So, but that will be a beautiful presentation that I will develop later on, Gabby, to share some of my experience there. Indeed, expressive language is becoming a more and more common topic nowadays. So thank you, everyone. I will go back to those questions in a minute. So I've been open on the questions, and I want you all to focus on the last column, high order thinking, recalling, and not recall information. I forgot to raise that one, my fault. So we may start with recalling information. So what happened yesterday? My husband hit me. Okay, how did it feel to you? We move a step forward. I was miserable and I did not know what to do. And then I don't know what to tell you. Elaborate on it. Tell me more. So we are advancing from levels in the Bloom's taxonomy, and I give you an example now later on with the phases of the levels and this example that I'm presenting. Actually, let me go there. I think it's going to be easier. So remembering, how did it feel? Understanding, elaborate on it. Applying, how would you respond to that event when your husband hits you again? You are actually inviting the individual to process and find solutions. Now, someone that has been traumatized, you may not have access to that. So you may probably be working in a loop on those areas because they don't know. But I'm just using this example to exemplify, not because I'm ignoring traumatic events or the effects of them. So analyze, tell me the pros and cons of this decision of yours. Evaluate, well, you have decided that you are going to go to the shelter. Any other alternatives? No, that's my good. So any other alternatives? No. Okay, then that will be your choice. The individual becomes created. So the questions are actually leading you to invite the individual to self-reflect, what we know as awareness. And to imagine that we call
It's really cool when you put it that way.
And imagine that we call them open-ended. Nothing is ending.
Right.
It remains opening and opening and opening until the other manifests truly in front of you. But look at
So
this.
can you imagine if you asked these questions out of order? If you didn't build them up to support this, allowing them to go through this whole process, you would get an I don't know, right? Like, how did you, or what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? How are you going to proceed with this, your life? You know, they're so emotional. They haven't had a time to reflect. There's all these thoughts and feelings and emotions coming out. And they might just say, I don't know. But then if you calmly take them through this process, they come up with a solution for themselves. Very powerful.
Because remember, your clients or whoever you serve, they know the answer. They can see it. Your job is to ask the right question, or better, your job is to take the individual from I don't know to a creative way of looking into their very own answers. The most of the time, they have it already in there. You are just undusting. And I love having cross-ended because you don't never end anything, not even a question. It remains open to the individual in their heart, in their minds, in their body. Have you ever read that book that I forgot
The body keeps the score.
There you go. Thank you, Oscar. The body does remain open. So I always get triggered when I read this type of English manifestations of the language. Open-ended, no. I will never end anything. It remains open into more questions. So, and once again, I want to remind you that Bloom's taxonomy offers a view on those questions, not only for the client, for you as the clinician. It forces you to begin more intentional in asking yourself, why would I ask? How did it feel to you? She just told me that the husband got home angrily last night. Why would I ask that question? And maybe these self-doubting thoughts will come to you. And it may be even scary to ask, but can you elaborate on it? How can I dare myself to ask someone that has been beaten up, elaborate on it? Is it because I have a bad intention for the poor individual to experience the trauma? No, I want the individual to begin activating everything to come up with their very own answer. That's intentionality. That's a purpose for whatever you ask. And that's included in the closet-ended as well. You ask the specific information because there is always a purpose. You don't ask questions just because simply you just woke up one day saying, I'm just going to ask this type of question.
Or to serve your own morbid curiosity.
Correct.
You know, did you hit him back? You know, did you break anything? You really, and one of the reasons we train clinicians to a new way of communicating, which serves anybody really, it doesn't have to be counselors, but we definitely have to use those skills in counseling, is because what we'll do when we're not sure what to do is fall back on our default way of being. And that might not be appropriate to the counseling environment. And you just say, you know, I hear people say, well, that's just how I am. Well, oh, great. You can be that's how you are. But when you're in the counseling role, we're going to give you a set of guidelines to be a more effective counselor. We're not saying you have to, you know, recreate yourself, but you definitely need to use these skills, because what you use like in your daily interpersonal life to people that know you and have, you know, strong personal relationships and trust and bonds is not the same things when you meet a stranger and you need to be able to connect with them effectively and quickly. Because if you don't make that connection, counseling can fizzle out. And so I love what you said, Gerardo, about everything you're doing is intentional. You're not just asking a question to ask it to make polite conversation. You're doing it to get somewhere. And if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, you need to evaluate that as a therapist. And this might sound very confusing to folks who are just starting out into the counseling field as we're introducing you to it. But these are dance steps and tools that you're gonna pick up and kind of look at and try on and use them. And they're going to be clumsy at first. And then the more you use them in concert with one another, They will become a graceful process. And when you watch a seasoned counselor work in the field, it looks effortless, but what they're doing is nothing short of miraculous.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you, Oscar. Indeed. But of course, I mean, I guess Oscar and I are presenting to you from this perspective of this is our experience. We have been doing this for a while. But what I'm inviting you today to do is to begin reflecting. When I sit even with my friends or with my partner, with my husband, with my wife, with my parents, do I ask them questions because I want just them to answer? Or is it that I'm truly present asking those questions with intentionality? That's how we started learning, when you start practicing even in the closest surrounding in your life. Because we just don't go in life lucidly asking everyone questions. I had a client once that told me, I can't walk into the lunchroom and say hello to anyone. How are you? How is your day? What are you gonna do in the weekend? And I remember asking this individual, so if you don't ask those questions, so what are you asking yourself? Do I need to ask those questions? Oh, beautiful question. And then that's what I gave the individual. Do you need to ask those questions? When they start reflecting, or when this individual started reflecting that I have been suffering because I want to force myself because of what the society has told me, that I need to create networks and I need to ask people and I'm professional and I need to actually be who I'm not, then we start thinking that there is something wrong with me. And that is not the case. Questions will come effortlessly as you continue practicing. But if you really don't like the person, do you think this is going to manifest naturally? That those questions will flow effortlessly? No, you will be challenged. But guess what? Once you continue practicing and building up your experience, even when the case is challenging, you are naturally evoking the response. You are naturally allowing the individuals to tell you their options, to tell you that they are to share with you that they are able to analyze, to evaluate, to create new answers for themselves. Okay, so the next thing, the next phase. Well, before I move there, any questions, any burning questions regarding the Bloom's taxonomy as it is applied to the open-ended and closed-ended questions before I move to the next section? I think I minimized the question. No questions? Okay, I guess I did great. So the next lens that I want to present to you is actually the etymological view. And what is that? It's nothing but the learning of the grammar and the language, in the English language, right? But I want to bring something very specific to you, which is to me the most interesting part. If you take a few minutes of your life to begin understanding the etymology of every word, I mean, impossible, but when you get interested in a specific one, it's going to take you to begin understanding where they are coming from and what's truly the meaning. All of the interrogative pronouns, what, who, when, as it is called in grammar, comes from, has a stem root in the know. This KWO as a stem actually formulates knowledge. So those questions were created from the Prototic Latin language that allows you to obtain information from other individuals. But I want to bring your attention to something very interesting. When would you ask about what, it comes from actually the Old English, and I can't pronounce that word, but it's referred to a thing in abstraction. So imagine when you ask me, what's your name? A very close-ended question. But because you know now that the what comes from knowledge and is referred as an abstraction, that what is more than just the name. You are allowing the other to tell you from all the names of the universe, which one is yours? So an expansion of the experience of the other. Now, the when, I absolutely love the when, comes from knowledge. And when you think about when, you are thinking about time, hour, a moment in the day. It's time and space. When you ask about time and space, you begin accessing the ability of the other to live in the moment. When you work with individuals that have been traumatized, you will encounter that some of them have erased the moment where it happens. They cannot even remember the time because there is a moment of suspension of the experience that doesn't exist. How can you eliminate the time and the space of your experience? And you
And
just came
why?
and exactly, and then you just came and asked a closet-ended question. When did it happen? I don't know, but let me tell you what I know. Time and space were happening simultaneously, that my experience was actually maintained in a place in my body and in my mind, in my soul, that can only be shared as an experience. This is very important because oftentimes we were actually instructed, at least me, from all my schooling, that my goal is to put myself into the shoes of the other through a beautiful concept called empathy, right? And I have argued all the time that there is an impossibility to ever be in the shoes of the other individual. The only thing you can do is get closer to the experience of the other, nothing else. This is very important because then this is when time and space become very interesting. If you are in my office at 3 o'clock, what's your experience? When you are narrating your traumatic event in my office at 3 o'clock. Guess what? Time stops because they are traveling, not in your office. You are evoking information from something inside. So the simple question of when did it happen is no longer a closet-ended. It's an invitation to check, to revisit, to remember, to tell you the experience. So the next one, where, right? This is actually very interesting because it's actually defined as the place. This is where it happens, and that's what it is. There is a geographical space. There is actually an experiential space. There is actually a phenomenological space. When I was in your office, Dr. Wentz, there was dust in your office and it was actually falling down. And then I was looking at it and I just got out of my, the location I was. I started actually thinking about somewhere else. Time and space and place, very important. Which I love this one because it actually makes me think about the creative level of the individuals in the Bloom's taxonomy. From all the options in the world, which one are you choosing? We have exploring 10 sessions, different way of embracing the challenge. Which one do you like? Well, I am thinking that I'm not going to leave my boyfriend, although it's a very toxic relationship. And here we are panicking. No, because the 10 sessions, we help you. Why? That's an option.
Right.
You
And it
just don't like it.
might not be one that you think is a good idea either, right? So this happens all the time. And we have to be open to accepting that.
The who did this to you? Very simple, closet-ended question, my dad. To the person. But who is the dad? What's the meaning of the dad? You are not asking questions with the intention of a single response. You're asking questions with the intentionality of elaborating other that will allow them to connect. Well, I'm sad because that did this to me. Because as I was sleeping, he abused me. And he was very important to me, and we had a very beautiful connection. And look what he did to me. And you just ask who? Very profound. So it's very important, at least I will invite you that when you encounter a word, that you really get moved to do the etymological root. Find out what's behind it. Much more than just the when, where, and which, and who, or a category in grammar, interrogative pronoun. Much more than that. Or simply sticking to the knowledge of it is a closed-ended and an open-ended, that's what they say, and I'm just gonna follow it. That's much more behind that. So I did want to take it a little time in explaining this, not because I wanted to give you a lesson in English, but because I want you to begin understanding that whatever you ask, whether it's a closed-ended or an open-ended, it carries more meaning. What happens is that we don't think about that meaning. And guess what? Your job as a therapist is to think about that all the time. Good. Any questions about the etymological approach or view of the questions?
But you don't know, but maybe if you haven't read Dr. Wentz's Vita, is that he was you were an English major, weren't you?
At one point in my beautiful life.
So those old lessons never stop paying off. So
They never do. They never do. So this is my favorite one, everyone. The humanistic view. I think it's a beautifully applicable to our field, and I want to give it to you, okay, for free. So here we go. So when we are actually working with individuals and we utilize these lower level questions that are related to the interrogative pronouns, the first step that is taking place, it's an intra-relationship with you. I'm sitting in front of the individual and I want to ask them, when did it happen? Or who did this to you? Or why, right? What we want to begin understanding is, what is it that I want to get from asking, when did it happen? Well, I want to get a recount of the event so I can track it down in my file. With what purpose, though? Well, maybe if they tell me, when did it happen, it will actually refer back to a specific day and I can track down since when the symptomology has started. Good. This self-talking process that you saw me just telling myself is an intra-relationship with you. As an individual who is asking questions, you are obligated to ask yourself the intentionality behind those questions. When we actually work with ourselves to understand the purpose of asking those questions, what follows is actually an interrelationship. I'm going to answer this question. That explains the poetry on time. Gabi, absolutely. That's a beautiful way of putting it. There is a beautiful philosopher, French philosopher, Garçon, in his book, The Poetry of the Space. Beautiful, Gabi. Yeah. Anyway, so how would you turn a trigger around when you think you are going in the right direction, but it turns unexpectedly? I don't, Donna, I don't believe that things are just coming up unexpectedly. I think that we poetry of space, indeed. Good work. So, Donna, I don't think that things happen unexpectedly. I think that we build up to that. But it is that unexpected event or trigger moment, a moment of change, because truly that was your intention. It just happens that nobody has trained us to begin believing that that's where you were heading to. And when it manifests suddenly and you have someone, having a crisis in your office, you say, but oh my God, I did that to my client and I didn't want to trigger that. No, you did. You got to trust the individual. You got to trust the individual to be able to handle the trigger, whether it's a word or whether it's a memory. whatever it is that you are doing is leading to that. The challenge is, are you aware of what you are doing?
Yeah, are you paying attention to the physiological responses? Are they getting nervous? Are they clasping their hands? Are they grasping their chest? Are you not paying attention that they're sweating or they're starting to stutter? There's lots of things that'll let you know that you're approaching this apex, this what I call the going up the roller coaster. When you're going up the roller coaster, it goes really slow, and then once you get to now it's too late. Now you're on the emotional ride, but you could have avoided it if you said, you know what? And I'll notice this if I'm with a client and I lean in when I want to show concern, or I'm very dynamic and my chairs are always on wheels so I can move around. And I'm like, you know what? I think this person needs a little space. This is just in my head. And I back up a little bit and I put my hands on my knees so I look less threatening. I slow my speech down. I lower it so it's calmer. It's more relaxing. May I ask another question? Do you need a minute? Or what's going on right now for you? Well, I'm getting very anxious. I see. I could tell. Tell me about that. Now, instead of going up the out of control anxiety, maybe we're just kind of reflecting on some of the feelings. And then I, as a social being, am transmitting messages. My rate of my respiration, I can feel it. If you're paying attention, I'm trying to lower my heart rate too. I might start taking some deep breaths and they will respond in kind. So I'm going in a different direction than Dr. Wentz was, but I think
but you're absolutely right. Even the example that you gave us of, so what's going on right now, or what's happening to you right now, you already noticed that. And even if it is an open-ended question, what you wanted it is the individual to become aware. Oh yes, I'm going up to the roller coaster that he's gonna take me. Oh, he stops. Okay. And then Oscar, nicely pulled away, begins breathing and modeling the other. This is rapport constantly. He is reporting, he is building a rapport, even if the relationship has been already established. But he's modeling to report, this is how we are going to be breathing. Because Oscar, was scared as well as where we were going. But I noticed it, I become aware because I was paying attention. So nothing happens just because it's beautiful. I do believe that the happenstance theory, I formally believe on that. But when we are working in sessions, you are actually leading their way. It's just that you haven't become aware that you are doing it. And that then becomes a question for you as a therapist. What's my intention? I keep asking those questions and I see he's sweating and I see he's actually, he's moving around, he's shaking the head and he is not answering me, but here is me continuing with the questions. I'm gonna be honest, there are moments in which I have continued even when I observe those manifestations, but it is only when my relationship with my client is super strong. That's when I do it. Otherwise, I give a space, I breathe, I model what needs to follow. The interrelationship is we take all your inner processes and questioning. So why would I want to ask that question when you ask yourself? Well, I want to know with the space because I think it will be important for the client to realize that maybe she didn't remember that when it happened, but it's still traumatizing. Okay. Then you grab your inner process and send the message to your client. In which format? What type of questions we are talking about? Open-ended and closed-ended questions. Whether you take the individual to a creative level or not, truly you are sending your inner own process, your interrelationship with yourself to the client. And what do we have? That I send you a clear message of the question, so the client gets all crazy. Oh my God, I don't know what to do. What she wants? But look, this is not happening. I'm just acting, but the client is not acting. The client is silence. And then you start thinking, no answer, silence. Then you start feeling uncomfortable. But all this is happening in their mind because you have posted a question that appears to be simplistic, yet evocative of the thinking. You are moving the individual. As you move on to the different levels, what you encounter is that you post a different question. So the message starts even more clear because the client is now becoming aware. This is what she wants to know. Not because she or he wants to respond to you as a clinician, because the thoughts are becoming clearer and clearer. And then finally, what we have? Oh, thoughts actually more straightened. Simply asking questions, whether they are opened or closed questions. And at the end, the client is clear to you. This is why I have not left my husband that has abused me. Because if I leave, who is going to pay my kid tuition that is like $50,000? This is what you wanted it to know? But I couldn't verbalize that to you as a client because I was not clear for myself. When you started taking me from remembering to actually a creative modality, then my self-awareness becomes present. And why is this important? Because remember that as a counselor, your inner process always remains present. Intentionality, why do I want to ask that question? Well, the purpose is for her to continue to be aware. Okay, well, question will follow. It will be an open-ended, closed-ended question, so I get more information, and then be creative and create in the next question. Very often you will hear in therapy, how does it feel? Good, I love the question. But if you become creative, you start modifying and playing around with it. Where in your body you feel it? Okay, in your head. Any other part? Your shoulders. Describe that to me. Yeah. When you start actually evoking this information, it's not only evocative to you, for the client. I never noticed that my shoulders were so tense. But now that you're asking me, suddenly I feel them. Oh, you are bringing attention to those. But now I can verbalize it to you back because I'm clear. So what do we have? You send me a message with a high order level questions. What is happening in my head as a client? Self-awareness, self-exploration, self-appreciation, inner communication, positive self-thought, applicability of my answers, analysis of what is happening. Never felt this way before. And then, of course, you advance to access the creativity of the individual to find their very own answers. And resolution happens. Everything that I'm presenting is not a one-day thing, okay? Don't imagine that I will walk into your office, whether it's if you're working as a clinical case manager or in any other domain, that you will get this process going in the first day. This is many, many days of work. But the entire goal is to actually allow the individual to manifest who they are through asking questions in which you are aware of why you are asking those questions. Yeah, being a counselor is a hard work. It's not as easy as sitting in the chair and tell me how you feel. It's sitting in the chair and then be fully present to ask questions with intentionality.
One thing I want to mention, I mentioned this whenever we use any kind of models, is keep in mind that this is a beautiful diagram of the way we conceptualize this, but this is not how it happens in real life. You could mix these all up in a three-dimensional ball, and that's what it would kind of look like. So you're kind of stepping in and out of these experiences that are still important. And when the person is very confused because of their own way of thinking and feeling about the thing, when you start to go through a process that's more clarified, it does give them more deeper awareness. So it's in, I know I'm kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth here. One, I'm saying it doesn't look like this in real life, and two, it's still helpful to go through the process because the best you can. You don't want to stick to your model just for the sake of that. This will create a barrier for you in therapy because you're saying, well, I got to do it this way because that's how they told me to do it,
Correct. Thank you, Oscar, for clarifying that. This is just a framework, a frame of reference. You will get to know your client or whoever you're helping in their very own way of living. So my entire purpose for you is to understand that open-ended question and closed-ended questions, where they are intentionally built, it leads you to some positive results. When they are just loosely sent to the client, you will have the client leaving your practice. The idea is that through these three views of those questions, you begin understanding that open-ended questions and closed-ended questions are much more than a simplistic yes/no response or tell me everything you want to tell me. It carries intentionality, and it carries a function based on the three perspectives I have offered you, including, of course, the grammatic view, including the Bloom's taxonomy, even the humanistic way of looking at you and the other. Both are connected in that moment. So this is just, once again, a framework. It's not that this is real life. It's not that, it's going to happen in this specific order. Not at all. You will be challenged, and I'm hope that you will get challenged, because this is how we actually grow as a clinician. So thank you, Oscar, for noting that. Appreciate that. So the humanistic use of questions, we use them to encounter the other. We use them to comprehend, never to be in their shoes, to comprehend, get closer to their experience, as closer as possible, to open yourself for the experience that is happening in that office, to, I made a horrible grammar error there, to explore your own motives behind questions. What moves you? Why are you asking? What's your intention? What is the purpose for asking those questions? Remember that when you're asking questions, you both are sharing energy. It's exhausting to be throwing questions. Mutual support, yourselves are present. I'm scared, she is scared. Oh, I'm noticing that anxiety. I'm panicking now because I'm triggering this individual. Both selves are present. Curiosity, very important. I know that there is a way of cognotating curiosity as gossiping. And what did you break? And where did he hit you? Curiosity that I'm referring to is, I want to remain present for you. I want to understand you. I want to follow your story. And always, always, always with intentionality. You can't just do anything without intention, because then it's actually risking the process and the human being that have come to your office for support. Okay. So in summary, closed-ended and open-ended questions have a purpose. Clarify what purpose that is for you. The power of both questions goes beyond informational functions. It gives you more. High order level questions produce awareness for the clients. Lower level questions help us guide the client. Both exist and are interrelated. None of them are less than the other one. The power of asking questions resides in the curiosity and the intentionality that you have for the client. And whether you ask or not, check in with yourself first. What's my purpose in asking those questions?
I really appreciate your emphasis on this verbiage about higher order, lower order, because in fact, we were trained incorrectly, right? That these are bad questions and those are good questions, right? And so then it's the same thing as empathy. We'll say, oh, we have to use empathy. Well, you don't want to empathize somebody the entire time. That's awkward and it doesn't really function.
True.
But I think when you get professors who are not seasoned in the field, as Dr. Wentz and myself are, we get these lessons that are half measure. And so I have the same I want to, whenever I train counselors or my students, I want them to benefit from the mistakes that were given to me that I discovered were mistakes through practice and error. So my experience has even more importance for me. And I can see it. It's a sticking point for you because it's the same thing that happened to me when I was going through my, as being a new counselor, you're starting to figure out everything they taught us in school isn't always exactly, is missing some things. And that's why you're supervised through the process.
Absolutely. And once again, everyone, be intentional. That's a very powerful source of energy in therapy. Allow yourself to ask questions. I'm not gonna tell you to come on, be reflective, during 15 minutes or 15 minutes. That's an impossible task. But once in a while, when you post a question, I just asked my mom, what are we eating for dinner? And then I thought, would it matter? Because you are gonna eat it anyway, wouldn't you? So what's my intention in using that energy towards my mom? Oh, I wanted it to create a conversation. Okay, cool, fair enough. But we got to be aware so that we can guide ourselves. Okay. So that's all I have for everyone. I want to invite questions. Now I can see all the chat and see if there are other things going on. We don't have questions today. Oh, okay.
As you're thinking about your questions, I'm gonna take control of the screen really quickly.
Sure.
And I want to remind everybody before we sign off of the upcoming events that we have. So our second symposium will be on November 16th and same time at 5:30 to 7. And then we also have human services field service orientation. So this is if you're going to start your practicum or take the practicum course, which is required for our majors in the associates and the bachelor's level. You got to come to this orientation. If you don't come to it, you can't enroll in that class. You will not have permission. If you've been to it before, you don't have to come. Okay. And then lastly, for those of you that are interested in becoming a substance abuse counselor, we're having a webinar on the 12th of October, 5:30, how to become a substance abuse counselor, addictions counselor. So keep those in mind. We've sent some reminders out, but I just wanted to touch base with you guys here, and then I'll give it back to you, Dr. Wentz. There's some other questions coming up here.
Do we need to enter a passcode? Yes, passcode yellow, 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 as in color yellow.
Yeah, so just put that in your assignment, submit it, and then we'll give you credit for coming to class. Yes.
There you go. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to me. I remember that these symposiums are building up one over the other. So if you were here for the spring one, this builds up into the previous ones. And of course, the following one is connected to this symposium as well, so that we can begin building up a series of skills in the counseling. Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple questions here. So will we post future symposiums? So all the symposiums are recorded and they're uploaded to YouTube. And we can give you a playlist of those so you guys can watch the past ones. We use them in lecture. We use them to kind of enhance the online training and education. So just to kind of fill gaps in there, and then also connect with you guys as students. We want to be able to build some rapport, let you guys know who we are, what we're about. We love what we do. We're passionate about it, Gerardo, and we are always looking for new ways of presenting information to you that's meaningful, that challenges you, and that's creative. And go ahead.
I have a question from Milo. Yes, you can attend this the symposium, Milo, even if you are not in the substance abuse program. This is for everyone that is interested to understand the human interaction and the human processes. Mhm.
Will an email sent out with the link to the human services orientation closer to time? Okay, write stuff down. So it's on November 2nd at 5:30. I will probably send up an email blast, but I try not to send too many because I notice that people don't like it. Some people are like, stop sending me emails, and so I like to use the blast, or I'll do the check your the course announcements. I try to do it hit you as many ways as I can, but at the same time too, I try to limit how many times I do it because I get too many emails too. I know what it's like. So
Thank you.
the word yellow 3 times, and that's your submittal.
And you are going to submit it to an assignment. It will say code for the symposium. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Mr. Sida, anything else that you would like to add?
I'm trying to keep up. There's so many things coming through.
Yes.
There will be more information sent out. Okay, that was already answered. I have the November one, but nothing about the October 12th one. Okay, so yeah, I thought I sent them out into the, well, it depends who you are, what classes you're in. So let me show you really quick, and I'll try to send it out because it depends who's asking. So all of our human service courses, including the CPD class, have had announcements put into them. Let's just see really quick, make sure that what I'm saying is true. Yeah, they're in the announcements. So you can take a look. If you don't look there, maybe that might be it too. Okay, so one more time. For your assignment for this symposium, you put in the word yellow, the color yellow 3 times, and you submit that. That's the passcode to verify that you were here.
NSC students are the same thing. I will post an assignment for you to write the code there as well.
Okay, I actually got a screenshot. Thank you. I just want to make sure we're able to answer everyone's questions. Was there anything left in the Q&A? And any final questions about the presentation or comments? Thank you, Dr. Wentz, for putting this great presentation together. Very thoughtful, very thought-provoking. You know, I've been a counselor for over 15 years, and I'm still learning new things when I work and talk with you. So it's always a pleasure and a great experience. And hope you guys really take the words and to experience that Dr. Wentz provides, because they're invaluable. You're not going to see counselors like this come across very often in your lifetime. He's been a great friend, mentor, colleague to me over the years that we've known each other, and I'm always in awe of his expertise and experience. So take it to heart. You know, I was thinking I'm going to watch this again because I'm distracted doing other things and I wanted to hear more.
Anytime. So everyone, enjoy your night. Please enjoy your loved ones. Have dinner with your families, your pets. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your night. And if you have more questions, you can always email us. Have a blessed night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.